Hello, everybody. Today, our presentation or our speech, my speech on mycology in Egypt. So it will be a presentation, just a discussion with all of you about the history of mycology in Egypt and who are the pioneers of study of mycology in Egypt. So you are welcome here, and all of you all of you are welcoming to ask me any question, because it will be just a webcam presentation, not a PowerPoint presentation. So just please introduce yourself here if you are joining the live video right now. So mycology, or the study of mycology in Egypt, it's a long journey dated back to end of the 18th century, maybe 1790 or 1799, something like that. But this long journey of study of mycology in Egypt is supplemented by different nationalities of mycologists and amateur mycologists and Egyptian mycologists also. So indeed, through this long journey, we can start with the beginning, with what we said, mycology in ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt, and what we said then in a wrong way, pharaonic Egypt. So I think it's much better to say ancient Egypt, not pharaonic Egypt. And they are interested to conserve biodiversity. Ancient Egyptian are behave in a good way with environment, with Nile water, with soil, with everything, and they are very interested to conserve biodiversity of living organisms, animal, plants, and fungi. And they using fungi in the form of lichens. And as you know, lichens is a symbiotic organism. It's composed of Ascomycota, a part of Ascomycota, a big order called Lycorinalis, and group of algae in a symbiotic relationship. And these lichens were used by ancient Egyptian in mummification and as antibacterial and antifungal producer within the mummy. So they can conserve their mummies by using a kind of special type of lichens. And these lichens easily recognized by researchers right now, and indeed some published work concerning these lichens genera looks like Rosella or Lacella or or Kilikia, whatever the genus. You can find this in Cobbins and Watling in 1995. They published a nice article about lichen genera, who's used as uh, a kind of dyes producer for painting, and also they are used in mummification, as Richardson in 1999, and Chomel and Brown in 2009, confirming the presence of thallus of Pseudovrenia inside Amames and belonging to the 21st dynastic era. And this is lichens already preserved in Botanical Museum of Berlin. So if you go to the Botanical Museum of Berlin, you will find this kind of lichens which already used for mummification or for decoration of jewelry boxes in ancient Egypt. So they are started to use lichens and for production of dyes, and also for preservation of mummification, as some kind of lichens produced antimicrobial substance. So are using this type of lichens to conserve. Yes, yes. Hagen and Dahlem, you can find this box already there, and you can find it easily. So I can send for you all information concerning this lichen. So easy, you can find it. By the beginning of what we said, 19th century, and during I don't like to talk about what I'm already discussed with all of you, why we already declared Egypt National Fungus Day, and how is that documented in some temples, and also in serpent deity cobra, which already present in British Museum. And I think Steve Berland, our colleague in USA, he can later present some of his nice work concerning documentation of fungi in ancient Egypt, in many temples and something like that. But by the beginning of 19th century, and during occupation by Napoleon Bonaparte and scientific researcher from France, who already produced la Description d'Egypte as a book describes life in Egypt, which containing all information about biodiversity, marine creatures, fungi, flora, animals, and even some painting concerning all life in Egypt. A scientist called Delili, he already published his work concerning flora the Egypt or of Egypt. He describes the first fungus, Phallus roseus. And before this presentation, I uploaded some of our treasures concerning mycology in Egypt. One of them is a photo of Delili by his red what we said, it's red cover beside Phallus roseus, who already described by him for the first time in 1813, and he already collected it from Domyatta and from Asyut in 1799. So this is the real start for real fungi, for macrofungi in Egypt, which already described by this French scientist. But don't forget that is all the majority of scientists concerning fungi as a part of flora. So also you will find, I'm just uploaded for all of you, some nice book covers concerning studies by different botanists worldwide concerning Egyptian fungi of Egypt, and they recorded it just in flora. So you will find that's flora of Egypt, flora d'Egypte. So it just a kind of including fungi under the plant kingdom. So that's it. So by the beginning of this century, 18th century, as I mentioned before, many researcher looks like Dixani in 1835, Askerson in 1879, Tomen in 1878 and 1879, Rumigere in 1881, and Batulard in 1895, Skemberger in 1901, Magnus in 1910. All of these researchers very interested to study the flora of Egypt, and they recorded both lichens and fungi. And also I just 2 hours ago I uploaded some of their studies covers, or the original cover of their paper on the website of Arab Society for Fungal Conservation. And if you are interested to read more, you can contact me by email, and I can send for you the original PDF file of their work. But Delali, as the starter of description of Egyptian mycology, and he started by Phalas Rusius, which already still till now we are just recorded it 2 months or 3 months ago from all the campus of Suez Canal University. Till now this fungus is already present in Egypt and recorded many times in Ismailia Governorate, in Asyut, in Minya. So we have it many in different records, as already Delali recorded from Asyut and from Domyatta. But let's go directly to when the real start of mycology in Egypt, and who is the real starter of that. The real starter of mycology in Egypt, the Polish Israeli scientist Israel Reichert, who already got his PhD in 1921, and I already published and upload a part the cover of his PhD 2 hours ago on this website. You can find it directly if you're interested to have this nice PhD. But for the Nile Valley, indeed, Reichert and Melchers are considered the pioneer scientists in documentation of local mycobiota in Egypt. A Polish-born Israeli Reichert, He already born in 1891, and he passed away in 1975. Went to study in Germany around the First World War. He prepared his doctoral thesis entitled Diebels Flora Egyptian, and which is he listed 237 species. Among the later 42 were then proposed as being new to science. So this scientist has recorded 42 species, novel taxa, Tibus material from Egypt, and he published that in his PhD in 1921. The corresponding specimen of the reported fungi had been collected by famous German biologist Ehrenberg. He already visited Egypt many times and during his explorations of Middle East region. And these specimens don't survive during the Second World War, as the Berlin museum and everything is hit by bomb. So the original samples of Reichert and the original Tibus material of 42 species of Egyptian fungi completely disappeared. But this is the real credit of Israel Reichert. He already passed away in 1975, and he is considered one of the real mycologist and documentary mycologist for Egyptian of fungi in Egypt. After Reichert, Professor Leo Melcher, he is American phytopathologist, and he is coming to Egypt through invitation of Egyptian Ministry of Agriculture as a chief mycologist for 18 months. And during his stay, he found a lot of difficulties, such as complete absence of record referring to occurrence, distribution, dates of any mycological observation conducting previously by any investigator. He just found a sample without any data. And Melcher's already underlined absence of complete local mycological reference collection in Egypt. So it is a big problem real in Egypt. Even till now, we have just 3 or 4 mycological collection in Egypt till now. However, during his stay, he could establish the first notable checklist for about 345 fungal species for taxa responsible for plant diseases in Egypt, and he published that in 1931. So 1931, it is considered the real date for publication of the first checklist concerning fungi causing plant pathogen in Egypt. It's a kind of documentation for all of you, and you can find it right now able to download. And if you're interested to have it, I can send it by email also. If you like to have this checklist, or I can download or send it by email. So again, by the end of third decade in 19th century, in 20th centuries, the real mycology in Egypt started, as I mentioned before, by Reichert in 1921 and by Melcher in 1931. So what happened between 1931 up to 1997? Oh my God, it's a big gap. But indeed, let me talk about who already produced a checklist concerning fungi in Egypt. As we know, if you have no real number or checklist concerning your organism, you can never at all to conserve or to study their biodiversity. Few decades later, Sami Al-Abyad, Professor Sami Al-Abyad, lead professor of Cairo University, and Professor Amira Abu Talib in 1993 published the first local report on habitat diversity of fungi in Egypt. And after that, by 4 years, Professor Sami Al-Abyad in 1997 published the first updated checklist of mycoflora, mycobiota, of 1,246 species of fungi. And he published his work through the activity of Ministry of Environment in Egypt. And I already uploaded some things related to Professor Sami Al-Abyad, his photo, and some of his publication in the website of Arab Society for Fungal Conservation. And if you're interested to read more about that, you can download my paper published in IMA Fungus concerning biodiversity conservation and the future perspective of fungi in Egypt, which already published in 2010. So you will find all information concerning taxa, taxonomic groups, how many species of each group. There is a good data in this work. So a big difference between 1931 and 1997. Who already worked in this period? Real start in soil microbiology and soil mycology should be the credit should be given to Professor Yunus Salim Sabit. Professor Yunus Salim Sabit, he born in 1898 and passed away in 1977. Sabit is graduated in 1921 from High School of Agriculture, which right now is called the Faculty of Agriculture, Cairo University. So Sabit is graduated from High School of Agriculture, and he was sent to England to study botany at University of London. And after that, he got his BSc with honor degree in 1925. And after he returned to Cairo, he joined the Ministry of Agriculture in the plant breeding section. In 1927, Yunus Sabit got a work as a lecturer in botany department of Faculty of Science, which already newly established in Egyptian University. And in 1935, Yunus Sabit published his pioneering study concerning soil fungi of Egypt. You will find the cover of this great work of Yunus Sabit uploaded in the Arab Society for Fungal Conservation Facebook website. And after that, Sabit has published good work with Van Bima in 1936, in 1938, in 1939 concerning soil fungi in Egypt, more studies and more detail. And this is his exploration led to the discovery of 3 novel taxa described from Egypt. One of them is called Penicillium aegyptiacum. Right now it's referred to Yunus Sabit and Van Bima, and this is already published in Transaction of British Mycological Society. So till the end of 1940, the start of soil mycology and fungi in soil in Egypt is started only by Yunus Sabit. And Yunus Sabit is not only working on soil fungi. He has already published great work in Nature journal concerning mycorrhiza in Egypt. 2 published work in 1939 and 1940. They are considered the pioneer studies concerning Glomeromycota or mycorrhiza in Egypt. Oh my God, he was a great scientist indeed. By the end of 1930, another studies concerning rhizosphere, biological control carried by Mustafa and Gayed, and in 1938, Professor Mustafa published something concerning mycorrhizal fungi of Trobolium majus, and this is already published also in Nature. So another studies started by the beginning of the 1940s, looks like rhizosphere fungi by Muntasir Itar 1956, Naim Itar 1957, Dr. Shukri Saad, the late professor in Alexandria University, who already studied air fungi with bowling green in 1958. Professor Zaki, who studied air fungi also in 1960. Professor Sawah and Al-Arusi, Faculty of Agriculture, University of Alexandria, who studied fungi of stored seeds and grains. But indeed, one of the most real contributions of fungi in Egypt should be given to Professor Magdi Ragab, Department of Agricultural Botany, Faculty of Agriculture, University of Cairo, who isolated 16 new species recorded for the first time in Egypt, and he published that in 1956 in Journal of Mycology. So it is a real contribution of Yunus Sabit and Mustafa concerning mycorrhiza, as they published in international journals, and after that Magdi Ragab, Professor Ragab, in 1956. This is a part of a real story of the beginning of mycology. Yes, Akram, I will give some presentation about how you can identify ectomycorrhiza and endomycorrhiza. This is maybe soon, inshallah ta'ala. But let we say the real credit of mycology in Egypt should be given to Professor Abdel-Al Hassan Mubashir. Abdel-Al Hassan Mubashir, late professor, he is born in 1928 and passed away 2018, and he is considered the godfather of mycology, as a godfather of mycology in Egypt and Arab countries. Why? Because he is introduced different groups of mycological studies in real way to Egypt. He already born in Sharqiya Governorate of Egypt and graduated from Cairo University in 1951 and gaining his PhD there in Cairo University in 1958 and DSC in 1996. He is working as a lecturer in Asyut University in 1959, and through the work of the real work and real mycology trend of late Professor Mubashir, he started to introduce many different fields of mycology in Egypt, and his student started to be distributed all over the country, and they founded a different schools under his supervision. Looks like Professor Salah al-Duhlub in Mansoura University, who studied his master under supervision and his PhD under supervision of Professor Mubashir, and he studied the distribution and the effect of temperature on distribution of fungi in soil. Late Professor Subhi Abdel Hafiz, who studied fungi and agricultural and salt marshes. Professor Abdel-Wahid Fahim Mustafa in Suez Canal University, who studied in his PhD air fungi in Asyut, and in his PhD soil fungi concerning Aspergillus and Penicillium. Late Professor Suad Abu Saud of Tanta University, who is she is considered a real macrobasidiomycetes mycologist based on her soul. And another professor, Professor Muhammad Bahiyuddin Mazen, he is working in Asyut University. Professor Ahmad Muharram, late Professor Madi. All of these great professors studied different trends of mycology in Egypt. They are real first career, first PhD and master degree students of late Professor Mubashir. And some of them also studied fungi, not in Egypt, but in Arab countries. Bahiyuddin Mazen in Syria and Jordan, late Professor Subhi Abdel Hafiz in Syria and Saudi Arabia, Professor Saeed in Yemen. So a lot of students distributed in Arab countries under supervision of Mubashir. Even he already published a great work in 1993 called Soil Fungi of Qatar and the Arab countries. He considered a compilation of a real study of himself of one of his students there to isolate fungi from different soil categories in Qatar, state of Qatar, and he included also a comparison between these species recorded in Qatar and that species which are already recorded in Syria or in Egypt, or so. It is a great book also concerning this type of soil fungi. But during this studies or various studies concerning different type of mycology topics, another great professor already emerged, and they established a big school. Looks like Professor Farid al-Hissi, late Professor Farid al-Hissi. She considered the godfather of aquatic mycology in Egypt. She started her pioneer studies in 1974, and she established a good school, a big school of aquatic mycology in Asyut University, and her students there looks like Professor Abdel Raouf Khalil, Professor Ala al-Nagdi, Professor Assam Ibrahim, and young researcher looks like Sabrine Soumail, and a lot of researchers there belonging to this big school of aquatic mycology, which already founded by Farida al-Hissi, peace on her soul. Also, we should we should remember Professor Anwar Abdel-Azeem. Anwar Abdel-Azeem, he is one of the considered as the pioneer of marine mycologist. Even his study started in 1990, and Anwar Abdel-Azeem is considered a seaweed taxonomist and seaweed ecologist. But indeed, Anwar Abdel-Azeem is as their student and their colleagues know him as peripatetic Alim. He is keeping all the time travel from a country to country to country, so they said is peripatetic Alim. So Alim is studied marine fungi in 1950 in Sweden, and he concentrated and published a real work from 1950 up to 1981 concerning marine fungi in Sweden, marine fungi in Red Sea, and he considered a real and the first Egyptian mycologist interested to study marine mycology. Even he is a seaweed scientist. After that, from Botany Department, Faculty of Science, Woods Valley University, Sohag, Egypt, came to us one of the most real young, energetic mycologist, and he is right now as a professor of marine mycology. He is Professor Muhammad Abdel-Wahab. Muhammad Abdel-Wahab, he is working a lot, and he published many new taxa and new species recorded from Egyptian mangrove samples after he studied under supervision of late Professor Hassan al-Sharoni and Jamalat Abdullah. So he published a lot of this work, and the credit of marine mycology right now in Egypt should given to Muhammad Abd al-Wahab. Concerning the group of entomopathogenic fungi or fungi parasitize insect. Indeed, if you back to a website, you will find me uploaded a cover of the first paper concerning entomopathogenic fungi published by Nataras. He is a British scientist. He worked in Egypt, and it published in 1932. Oh my God! So they studied the entomopathogenic fungi in 1932. Yes, they studied that. But after that, few records just recorded about entomopathogenic fungi in Egypt, but several studies looks like Badran and Ali Shulami, Gamal Suwaifi, Abdel Baqi in 2000 and 2001, Abdel Satir al-Iraqi and Abdel Malik Ital, the great scientist in Asyut. They studied the fungi parasitized insect, and they published many good work also. Concerning the nematophagous fungi, the fungi parasitize nematodes in Egypt. The real credit should be given to Professor Hamdi Abul-Eid, Department of Plant Pathology and in Nematology Laboratory in National Research Center in Doi, and he studied that in 1933, and he published many data concerning that. And up till now, we have about 12 species belonging to 7 genera recorded in Egypt as nematophagous fungi. So, real nematophagous mycology branch should be given to Professor Hamdi Abul-Eid, Department of Plant Pathology, Nematology Laboratory, National Research Center, and his co-workers and his student. As I mentioned before, concerning Basidiomycota in Egypt, and indeed studied by, you will find a lot of publication concerning that in Melcher. You will find that in list of Melcher. You will find that in a list of Al-Abyad. So I think if you need to publish something as a new record, you should back to these 2 checklists. As I'm already started in 2010 to update this checklists with myself and with my student and with my co-workers, so we published many updated checklists, looks like protozoa and fungal analogs in Egypt in 2013. We published glomerion mycorrhizal in Egypt in 2016. We publish teleomorphic ascomycota in Egypt 2011. And right now, within 2 days, you will have a real estimation of genus Aspergillus in Egypt. 155 species recorded in Egypt from 1921 up to 2020, with updated key for the 150 species. So we worked for more than 18 years in this key, and you will see online soon on microbial biosystems. So right now, if we're gonna to talk about Glomeromycota, as Akram mentioned, Glomeromycota or mycorrhiza, the work is the credit work is started by Yunus Sabit, and after that, Faris in 1986 in Faculty of Agriculture, Ain Shams University, got his master degree, and after that, Professor Gamal Abdel Fattah, Mansoura University, got his master with Ishaq and Manqarius. And this work is considered just few of them, and Professor Hamdi Agwa in Kafr Sheikh University is doing few studies concerning taxonomy. But real taxonomist in Egypt concerning Glomeromycota is Professor Niveen Alem Nafadi in Asyut University, who got his PhD in under supervision of Professor Mazen on taxonomy of mycorrhiza. So she recorded 34 new records of mycorrhiza in Egypt. So the real taxonomist concerning this group and the phylum of endomycorrhiza is Niveen Allam Nafadi in Asyut University. She is bearing right now on her shoulder the burden of mycorrhizal identification in Egypt, as she well trained, and she got a lot of experience and work on taxonomy based on phenotypic identification by using light microscope, SIM microscope, and by molecular identification also. So if you're interested to find a good scientist doing that for you, so contact Niveen Nafadi in Asyut University. Also, I would like to talk to about Basidiomycota. What about Basidiomycota pathogen? As you know, Basidiomycota is classified into either macro and micro Basidiomycota. So macro Basidiomycota, we said it's mushroom. Some of them is ectomycorrhiza. What about the pathogenic Basidiomycota, which causes rust and smut diseases in Egypt? Indeed, the start of this branch is dated back to Reichert, as I mentioned before, in 1921. So the British scientist Bretton Jones in 1922, Philip and Slim in 1941, Abdel-Haq and Abdel-Rahim in 1950, Rajab and Mahdi in 1966, Sawah in 1969. And a lot of studies carried by Egyptian mycologist. One of them is Professor Zakaria Ba'a in Dumyat University, who got PhD, his PhD on rust diseases in Egypt, and he got that in UK. So this is concerning phytopathogenic or plant pathogenic Basidiomycota in Egypt. As I mentioned before, a lot of published work is concerning this important group of organisms. You will find it in my article concerning this topic. Professor late Professor Suad Abu Saud in Tanta University and with her student, they worked a lot on macro Basidiomycota, and indeed they published real work concerning the taxonomy of Basidiomycota, and this is the study of the pioneering study of Basidiomycota in Egypt. Real credit should be given to her, peace on her soul. And after that, some professors and PhD students started to follow up her steps in studying Basidiomycota. Some located in Dumyata University, some in Cairo University, some in Ain Shams University, but the credit should given to her also. So if we go again to what we said, medical mycology in Egypt, and also lichens in Egypt. Let's talk about lichen in Egypt. Lichen in Egypt is a very, very important topic in Egypt, and as I mentioned before, the study of lichen forming fungi is dated back to ancient Egyptian, and many researchers since Delali started to collect samples from lichens in Egypt, and this means that Egypt was not that arid country as this time, but it's a lot of researchers like Nylander in 1864, Muller in 1880, and the other collected a lot of samples, and they started to document the lichens in Egypt. But indeed, few studies of lichens as taxonomy and as an ecology of lichens is recorded in Egypt. Looks like Hatem Khalil. He is one of my colleagues in botany department in South Canaan University, and he got his master degree in 1995 on lichens in North Sinai. As example, Professor Kurayim in Zagazig University, he has studied the lichens on trees, especially fruit trees, and this studies is very, very few. Also, Professor Talat from Dumyata University just recorded a new record in 2012. So I mean, it's not lichens is not attractive attention of Egyptian mycologists. I don't know why. So I wondered. I should also discuss with you a certain group of fungi. Looks like Chytridiomycota. As I mentioned before, Professor Farid Al-Hissi started this interested aquatic fungi group, and after that we started to find another very important group. It's called the Blastocladiomycota, or belonging to true fungi. But the credit of this work should given to Professor Sami Kamil Mahmoud Hassan. He is from Minya University, and he has obtained his PhD from University of Warsaw in Poland, indeed. And he works on chytrids and aquatic fungi in 1982, and he has made a series of studies of chytrids in Egypt, and with his professor in Naghi in Minya, and he published a lot of work even on Chytridiomycota, Blastocladiomycota parasitize Spirogyra. Something published international and the other published in local journal. So Blastocladiomycota credit should be given to Sami Kamel of Minya University. Also, I would like to talk about yeast in Egypt, and yeast in Egypt is started by I mean, here is taxonomic studies on yeast in Egypt by Professor Mamdouh Haridi, Minya University, Faculty of Science, and he studied identification, taxonomy, and he completed his PhD on taxonomy of yeast in Technical University of Munich. So again, you can find this thesis for me if you can. So I need to have a digital copy of this thesis. I will send for you all information concerning this thesis. And he doing extensive studies on Egyptian subtropic yeast from different ecological habitats and sources, and he published that internationally in a journal looks like Mycology, and another, I don't remember the name of journal, but he is considered one of the real Egyptian mycologist work and study taxonomy of yeast. And even right now we are lost this this expert. And even when I met Professor late Professor Cortesman, the father of taxonomy of yeast, peace on his soul, in Italy in 2015, he mentioned to me, Ahmed, we need Egyptian mycologists to study yeast because Egypt is considered for us overlooked and without any data concerning yeast in Egypt, and we need a young mycologist to concentrate on yeast. So if anyone interested to start this field, you should go directly to yeast because it's overlooked in Egypt and no one interested to complete what already Mamdouh Haridi started in 1987. Also, what about what we can say is medical mycology? Medical mycology is Israel branch already established by Professor Yusuf Abdel-Ghani Yusuf, and this school is started in 1967 during the war, and he started, and the lead professor has published 2 papers on fungus infection of human ear. And after that, his student and colleague become interested in medical mycology, serology, and fungi, and pathogenic yeast. Looks like lead professor Zahra Karamuddin and his student Sharif Zaki, who's leading the medical mycology school right now in Ain Shams University. Also, we have one of the most important mycologists in Egypt. He started his career concerning mycotoxin. He is Professor Ismail Abdel-Razi Al-Qadi. He in 1979 he is working on mycotoxin producing fungi in Egypt, and he is working in Asyut University, and he already published huge amount of paper, and his schools is right now running by Professor Abdel Nasser Zohari and Professor Al Maraghi, and a lot of powerful and brilliant mycologists in Asyut University working on this trend of mycotoxins. So also this is this credit should given back to Al-Adi. But right now, who is the most Egyptian mycologist already studied, isolated, reported, and introduced the new species to science, Tibus material from Egypt. Who is the most top one? Professor Jan Mushaka. Professor Jan Mushaka, he is our brilliant mycologist. Jan is born in Alexandria in June 29 in 1938, and he from two Armenian parents established in the Nile Valley early in 20th century. Don't forget this name, Jan Mushaka in English. In Arabic, Jan Mushaqqa. Jan is the responsible mycologist who studied fungi deteriorated Ramses mummy in France. When the mummy is deteriorated and Egypt transfer it for examination and for conservation processes in France, Jan, he is the mycologist who studied and isolated fungi from Ramses mummy there. And if we arranged these studies and published work, let me say Reichert introduced 24 new taxa from Egypt to the science, so 24 Tibus material from Egypt, recorded by Reichert, who already studied that in 1921. After that is followed by Mushaka, and he already described 18 new species from Egypt. With Rob Sampson, he published in 1974 and 1975 new Tibus material from of genus Aspergillus, looks like Emericilla, Desertorum, and different species introduced to science from Kharga and Oasis in Egypt. So the second one came as Professor Jan Mushaka, and Professor Abdel-Wahid Fahim Mustafa is from Faculty of Science, University of Suez Canal. He and his co-workers just introduced 11 new taxa to science. We are talking about the top Egypt mycologists. I know we have different mycologists introduced 3 or 4, but we are just talking about the top right now. I know is Muhammad Abdul Wahab is coming soon to the top. I know is by his research and with his working with Kevin Heidi and Gary Jones and marine fungi and drifted wood, considered a great source to discover a new species of fungi all the time. As I mentioned before in my presentation, where are the missing Egyptian fungi? So I mentioned yeast, I mentioned endophytic fungi, I mentioned entomobiosogenic fungi, I mentioned nematophagous fungi, marine fungi. So we have a lot endophytic fungi. So we have a lot black yeast, stone colonizing fungi. We have a lot of ecological habitats still overlooked by Egyptian mycologists, and you can find in them new sources of new species and Tibus material to science. We know that the expected number of fungal species about 3 million species, but then now we're just working on 120,000 species. So we need to work hard to discover new species of fungi. I think this all of information concerning this topics, as I mentioned in my presentation, you will find a nice article published in 2010 describe the pioneer leaders of this mycology group in Egypt. Myself and my student, we are not considered us as leaders in something. We just try to document that for all of you and to support all of you with all information, with checklist, and I'm sure that some of you is working in different categories of science, and he can help us to support us by some of all the original paper, some thing for database. Right now we will release database concerning Egyptian fungi. We are working on that in website of Fungi of Egypt. If you go there, and you will find a box concerning search, and if you put as example Cladosporium cladosporidus, so you'll find it's isolated by Sabit in 1935 from soil number kaza in Ismailia or in Abu Sultan. So we are going to do that, but it took a lot because we are non-profit organization. We are doing that by ourselves, and we are turning a lot, and no one interested to help, or no one interested to working hard to document the history. So if you need to push Egyptian mycology to the top, you should document your data. You should have a database for your work, not Aspergillus niger recorded by Abdel-Azeem, blah 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 blah. It is not data. You need to read about data documentation and website of cyber travel. So you will find that in David Mentor cyber travel website. And you should know that his fungi is not alone. He's living with associated organisms. Looks like plants, insect. So when you start to record your data, you should read about the original description. Is it associated with something? Is it associated with a leaf litter? It is with insect, blah, 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 blah. So this is already our mission in this life, to record all data of Egyptian fungi and to give it for free for anyone interested for that, to upload that in our website, and to give this data to Index Fungorum database. As all the time I'm checking the Egyptian all the mycological literature, and I'm back to Paul Kirk to please Paul. This record is not from Egypt. It's maybe from Sudan, so please update or correct that. This record is not recorded in your database, please add it. So when you read our Aspergillus, which will be released in 2 or 3 days, we just recorded who is the first scientist isolate this species. So if you find, we said Aspergillus niger, Yunus Sabit 1935, it does not mean that we overlooked the others. No, but if we started to record all people till 2020, it will not be a paper. It will be encyclopedia for Aspergillus niger. We just recorded the first author working on that topic, or isolated this organs. Also, you will find what we said, name authority and updates, because some species is still problematic. Okay, so don't run after a wrong name for Aspergillus. It's already changed completely, and some species looks like section ornati is completely problematic right now. So you will find huge amount of effort done by myself and my team. They are great professors, and we have also statistical analysis of data concerning this work. And I hope this presentation sheds a light about on the great Egyptian mycologist started from Thabit as Egyptian until 2020 by Muhammad Abdel-Wahab. He's a marine mycologist and shed the light on the starter point of mycology in Egypt, dated back to 1813 by Delali in the Description d'Egypte book, published by scientists of France during the occupation. Also, as I mentioned in my this talk, if you are working for old library, something like that, if you are have access to find all the information, just ask us, just help us, because we need to document all of this. This documentation will give you good access for all information. Right now, I'm working with Jan Mushaka, with Professor Jan Mushaka, and with Paul Kirk for publish the bibliography of mycology in Egypt is more than 7,500 record. 7,500 record of published work in Egypt. So you will find a great bibliographic study. We are working for it for 3 years, and it will be published within 10 days or more, and you will find that it's a big one. If you're gonna to read or search plant pathology Basidiomycota, you will find all people in Egypt studied Basidiomycota in alphabetical arrangement or by year, whatever. So you'll find all information available for you. So my presentation right now is finished. So I am all of you. Thank you all, and I am yours right now. If you have any question, if you have any comment, I can answer all of you right now. Thank you. Thank you, Heba. Thank you, Professor Nisreen. It's my pleasure. So next time I will put many topics for you. One of them is mycorrhizal identification, basis of identification. Also, I will invite Professor Amira Galal Darwish to present a presentation about mycotoxins. Also, we can give another presentation about trichoderma basic of identification, or fusarium basic of identification, fusarium basic of identification. But I would like to thank all of you, and please check our journal, Microbial Biosystems in Egyptian Knowledge Bank. It's a free access journal. You can download all the previous four volumes with issues for free. You will find a nice Hagen you will find a nice special issue of this journal concerning the relationship between ancient Egyptian and the conservation of fungi. It's a kind of paints produced by our friend Frouzan Shaf'i. She is a great painter from Iran, and she mixed between fungal conservation and ancient Egyptian in many artistic way. So you will find this. If you find, I will give you the link here right now. So just please, here is the link of Microbial Biosystem Journal. So please, again, you just distribute it whatever you want. All people can download free access papers, especially a special issue of volume 4 in last August. You will find a nice thing related to conservation of fungi, and also you will find ethnomycology in Poland as a nice article also. Thank you, Dr. Monga, and thank you, Nihal. Thank you, Professor Amira, and have a great night, and see you again, inshallah. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.